VikesNow, I am Dustin Baker. We are 9 days away from the regular season, Vikings and Buccaneers. But I want to cover with you guys and gals today is a small tidbit of what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the Vikings general manager, said at a press conference where they announced TJ Hawkinson's mammoth extension. That man, TJ, the logo, will be attached to the Vikings roster now through the end of 2027. So if you didn't think he was a Viking before, you better believe it. He is now. He'll be part of the fabric of the organization indefinitely I guess there is a definitely part of it for the next 5 seasons. But at that press conference, the Vikings general manager, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, was asked about some of the trades that didn't work out. Like, what were your thoughts on Jalen Reagor and Ross Blacklock having to cut them yesterday? And, he was melancholy about how that didn't work out. But the takeaway from that response was Kwesi said, "We're going to continue taking risks in this organization." And I, Dustin Baker, I'm here to tell you why that matters. So I want to set the table first on the trades for Jalen Reagor and Ross Blacklock, late rounders sent in the Eagles and Houston Texans directions last year. For some reason, we're bringing those up as poor transactions. I understand that those men didn't work out and they would be considered bad or poor trades, but I ask you, who cares that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah sent late round draft picks for upside guys that didn't work out after a single season? You watched a couple drafts not long ago where Rick Spielman would stockpile late round picks, chiefly 7th rounders. I think it was the 2020 NFL draft when he had just a lollapalooza of 7th rounders. And you got mad over that. You're like, this is too many. These are too many lottery tickets. This is dumb. We keep stockpiling these 7th rounders. It was a stigma attached to the end of the Spielman era. Why do we even keep doing all these trade backs for these 7th round draft picks? Well, now you got a guy who's doing the opposite. He's sending some of those late rounders to other teams for veterans. It didn't work out in these 2 scenarios, but which one do you want? You don't want him to trade for vets, or you don't want him to trade for extra draft picks. You want him just to do nothing. That's what you'd like from a general manager. I don't understand why the low-risk transactions with the Eagles and Texans for late-round draft picks, why that would be considered a scourge for a young general manager. And he's going to keep doing them. He told you that yesterday. They're going to continue taking risks in this organization. Now, if you want to look at the trade that really had oomph, it's the TJ Hawkinson trade, because Kwesi donated a 2nd and a 3rd rounder for Hawkinson and 2 fourths. That is a meaty trade. That one means something. If Hawkinson got to Minnesota last November and sucked, on this show today, we'd be talking about why that was a shitty transaction. He should probably pump the brakes on these damn trades, but he nailed that one, and that one was the one that really matters because it involved expensive draft capital, a 2nd and 3rd rounder for Hawkinson, and then 2 additional 4th rounders, which is pretty wild that they threw that in. So kudos to Kwesi for the Hawkinson trade, and shame on him for Blacklock and Reagor. And he also got Nick Mullins last year. I know that Mullins didn't play too much against the Bears. He was in Week 18 in the second half, but he's a good QB too. And to end the Mannion era and the ill-fated Mond era, it was probably worth it to send the conditional 7th to the Raiders for Nick Mullins. So that's a good trade that we don't talk about. You have that insurance in Mullins if something happens to Cousins, to at least not go to the depths of hell if Cousins gets hurt or whatnot. But when we look at these bad trades with Reagor and Blacklock, I'll recommend that you look at the good stuff with Hawkinson. Bada bing, they just locked in the guy for 5 more years after they traded a pretty small trade package, especially considering the 4th rounders that came back. So look at the good with the bad, and I think the very reason that we're going to continue to take risks in this organization is because you have the good stuff like Hawkinson that really worked, that saved the Vikings offense last year. Hawkinson was basically Irv Smith that we wanted. Every year we predicted an Irv Smith breakout. Then within a couple days, Hawkinson was traded for, and he looked like what we wanted Irv Smith to do for years. So with the good and the bad, Kwesi got a taste of both in year 1 on the job, and so he's going to continue to do it, hoping that most of the transactions end up looking more like the Hawkinson deal than the Reagor or Blacklock. But this is what you wanted when the Rick Spielman and Mike Zimmer era got stale in 2020 and especially in 2021. They had a nice run, NFC Championship, almost a storybook season, but it really did down in the 2020 and 2021 seasons, it felt we're not going anywhere because the Zimmer defense that was once very prominent and very ferocious wasn't like that anymore. And if his calling card's gone, that team isn't going to do too much. But when they turned the page on that era, you, I think, wanted a offensive-minded head coach and a general manager who wasn't afraid to shake things up. That's exactly what is happening. You got a bold, young general manager who is fearless about trading for these Ragers and these Blacklocks and these Hawkinson. So I ask you, what did you want when they divorced Rick Spielman? You wanted a guy that only made the kind of trades that you liked? That's not how sports work. You're going to get the thinker, the innovator in Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, and then he's going to do things in his way. And I think when the Vikings wanted to be done with Spielman and Zimmer, that this is what you wanted. You wanted a young guy who would take risks and use analytics to make the best decisions that he could, and bada bing, you got a guy like Hawkinson as a result of that. So I challenge you to go back to your purview or your frame of thought 2 years ago, and when you're sick of Spielman always stockpiling seventh rounders, can't draft a quarterback, can't scout a quarterback, you wanted change, and Kwesi is the change. I think the success for Hawkinson, too, paves the way for more fun deals at the deadline. I don't know that they're going to pull off any trades in the next 9 days. It wouldn't surprise me if they do. But I think we are setting ourselves up because of the success at the trade deadline last year. We're going to have a little climax on whatever the trade deadline date is this year that normally, under the Spielman circumstances, it would kind of just came and went. And we're like, oh, he sent Stephen Weatherly to the Broncos for nothing. I think this year, because it worked last year, we can have a little bit more excitement about, all right, is Kwesi going to cook? Is he going to do something at the deadline? And that in itself is kind of cool. They're not afraid to try stuff. And I think the biggest takeaway from this, folks, we're not afraid to take risks in this organization, directly implies and predicts what they're going to do at quarterback when Kirk Cousins is no longer attached to the roster. Cousins turned 35 a couple weeks ago, and that's great. He might have his best season ever in 2023, or he could be the same, or he could start a performance-related decline. That happens when guys get this old. I'm like 5 years older than Kirk, so, old is old. But right now, we know the Kirk Cousins era is winding down simply because of his age. This is a contract year. The way it stands right now, he is not scheduled to be back with the Vikings. You're going to want a general manager, especially for this franchise, who is going to continue to take risks in this organization. Why? Because the old way, 62 years worth of doing it at quarterback, has not worked. It's got damn close 4 times and then several other times at various NFC championship losses. But you are going to want, I hope, a general manager, a leader, to get aggressive when they go get the next quarterback. The way that this Hawkinson deal is structured, and then Jefferson should be paid here in the next week. Next offseason, they're going to have to pay Darisaw. All of this is compiling to suggest that the next quarterback is probably going to play on a rookie deal for 4 or 5 years. I don't know that they can afford Hawkinson, Jefferson, Darisaw, and then the next QB1 like for $40 or $45 million per year, because that's what the going rate will be before too long, if it isn't already. So the writing on the wall financially by the moves that they're making with Hawkinson, that they will make with Jefferson, that they will make with Darisaw 1 year from now, it's setting up for another climax that's going to be a young quarterback who is relatively inexpensive, probably on a rookie deal, hopefully from the first round, and you want your general manager to take risk in going to get that guy. It may involve trading a lot of draft capital up the board to get him, and we'll figure out who that guy will be. But what you don't want is the same shit that the Vikings have done for 6 decades, where it's like, all right, baby, we're going to get Jeff George for a year and hopefully he plays well. Or, we're going to go find a veteran quarterback and see how it goes. We're going to have a half-ass solution in the draft and try a 3rd or 4th rounder. No, I think what we are sizing up right now is Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell's big swing at their quarterback of the future. I don't know if it's Jaron Hall. They seem to really like him. But whoever it is going to be on an affordable contract based on how much money they're going to be paying Darisaw, Jefferson, and Hawkinson before too long. And Jefferson's money will kick in officially in 2025 because he has 2 years left on the rookie deal. So I would confidently say by the time that we're talking on this show 2 years from now, the quarterback will not be Kirk Cousins, and it'll probably be a passer on an affordable deal from some upcoming draft. I think the writing's on the wall, and you really do want your general manager to get frisky in finding that next guy. Not just hanging out and say, well, let's see what falls to us in the draft. No, trading up, getting the guy like the Chiefs did in 2017, getting up to the 10th pick, snagging their guy of the future. And you might recall that right after the 2023 NFL draft, there was some credible reporting that came out that suggested the only way the Vikings were going to trade up is if Bryce Young fell. Now, that means they viewed him as the cream of the crop. I still think C.J. Stroud's going to be pretty good too. But I love the mentality that, we won't be afraid to move and shake if Bryce Young falls to 4th or 5th or something like that. That was probably never going to happen, but drafts get funky. And if it did, it was cool to know that this risk-taking acumen that they are continuing to define, it would have been in play for Bryce Young. And that's the mentality that you'll want in next year's draft. And if Kirk's back, then the draft after that. And then I think on the whole, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah deserves some credit for some of the stuff that we just take for granted now. We spend a lot of time bemoaning Andrew Booth, not progressing as fast as we like. Lewis Cine, who knows when he's going to play. I get those frustrations. A first-year general manager's first 2 picks don't look great right now, although there's still time for them to materialize. But what about, finding Ivan Pace? And after that guy had a wonderful training camp and good 2 preseason games, it's an established fact among me and you that guy is going to either start or play a lot in 2023. And we're kind of like, oh, cool. Well, no, we should be touting that as a Kwesi special that he just happened to find this linebacker who was too short to be on the field in his rookie season. It's a big damn deal. And no general manager is perfect. You can go find the best ones and look at their resume of work, and you're going to find shoddy trades, shoddy free agent signings. That's just the way it goes. You have to keep trying stuff to figure out if it's work. It's like for you guys and gals who fish out there. If you're participating in a walleye tournament, and I'm in South Dakota, so we have those somewhat frequently, and you go to the first lake for 2 hours and nothing's working, usually, we take the boat out of the water and we go to the next lake as fast as we can so we don't lose the tournament. And you're just trying new stuff. You're cutting bait, however much gas it costs to get there. You're not afraid to get up out of the lake and try a different lake. And I think that is what the Vikings do and what good general managers do. They're not afraid to try stuff, and when it's wrong, they cut bait. The 49ers had a humongous gaffe in drafting Trey Lance now 2.5 years ago. But this year, they're like, you know what? We bungled that. And he can go have a fresh start. We're going with what we have. You might look back and see it on bad trades list, but they're not letting it phase them. They're still favored. They're, I think, the second most favored to reach the Super Bowl in the NFC. So they didn't let him get it down. So I would advise you to expect more of these trades and risks from Kwesi Adofo-Mensah because that's what you got when you signed up for a Moneyball general manager. All right, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and then let's see, we'll be back Monday. I'm going to start getting some of my predictions for the 2023 season out in the open. Spoiler alert, I'm already going to predict them to finish 11-6 and win the division. I still think the Packers will be formidable, not convinced on the Lions, but I'm going to go through predictions within the roster and how that stuff goes. I don't know if they'll be bowl predictions, but they'll be generalized predictions. Then we'll have Josh Fry on Wednesday to start sizing up Bucks at Vikings. That's all we got. Have a good weekend. Later.